Welcome to an exciting episode of the Gain Momentum podcast. I'm joined by my co-host Vincent Thompson and our special guest today, Carlo Del Mistro. He's the founder of Norby and a recently appointed Gain advisor. Carlo, how's it going?
Hi, Adam. Thank you for the introduction. It's pretty good, to say.
Yeah. Che fai oggi?
Oggi sono a Londra, giornata piovosa. It's the summer is already over here in London, so I'm like the usual gray gloom.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, but it is a hotbed of hospitality. There's a ton happening there. So to start off, tell us how you arrived in London. Give us some career highlights.
Absolutely. Throughout my career, I've been working at the intersection really of customer proposition and commercial performance. And I have this thread of technology that like sprinkles it over. I started in Italy working in corporate strategy. I was in McKinsey straight out of uni. And then I started looking more into operation. I moved to London about 20 years ago now, even though my accent is still pretty much fresh off the boat. However, my first experience in hospitality was with One Fine Stay. You may know the company is a peer-to-peer marketplace acquired by Accor. You will see it's not the first time this happens in my career, but I was at One Fine Stay, and at the time we were really building this luxury peer-to-peer marketplace, and I was taking care of all the commercial side of the London market. I then moved and I landed in Premier Inn, the large budget chain in the UK, 800 hotels. And there was really my first experience of hospitality at scale. And it was like large listed company, and seeing how a company like that operates was a really eye-opener for me. And that it was where I was working really with technology. It was about the customer experience, what the customer needs, and building the app, building the check-in flow. It was really exciting. I then moved in 2019 to Ennismore. And Ennismore at the time was a founder-led hotel management company. I was reporting directly into the founder, and at the time we were growing the Hoxton and Gleneagles as the two brands. And I left in January 2026, and the company now is part of the core group. Is about almost 200 properties, over 20 odd countries, 17 brands. And it's really, the experience at Ennismore was amazing, because it was the opportunity to bring together product and engineering from a technology side, but then also e-commerce and loyalty on the commercial side. And it was, for me, an experience of seeing what does it mean being brand-led, multi-market, and using technology to really put everything together. Since I left, I've been spending more time doing advisory role by Norby, and I've also been building, particularly around the space where AI and digital execution can really improve direct revenue and loyalty.
Awesome. Carlo, can you tell us a little bit more on why Ennismore really stands out in the Accor portfolio and in general as one of the most innovative brands in the hospitality industry?
Absolutely. Ennismore describes itself as a collective of founder-led lifestyle hospitality brands. And here where the focus is really on the founder-led. What Ennismore does is involves the founder in the day-to-day of operation of their hotels. And you can really see that each one of the brands has a real personality, has a real brand, and really focus on that. And the other area is that the lifestyle hospitality, lifestyle hospitality is, what does it mean? Is like, it's not only rooms, F&B is as important, but then especially is about the brands, is about the culture, is about the community and the experience that, are very central to what is, lifestyle hospitality hotel. And then looking at the technology, Ennismore has always been technology focused. when I joined originally in 2019, Ennismore already had a technology team. We had 10 hotels. And at the time, it was a bit crazy having engineers and a CTO, product managers, etc. in such a company. But it's because Sharan, the founder, really believed that we would not have been as successful had we not been complete control of our technology and the user journey. So we built our own booking engine, we curated our website and online experience, and we really managed to set the voice of the brand from the beginning of the customer journey. Today, clearly is multi-brand, complex operation, and from a technology point of view, is a very different challenges from the beginning. Is about common platforms, is about the data foundation, and anything else that comes.
Yeah, and I can imagine that integration with Accor a couple of years ago that also brought some challenges and opportunities, of course. Can you tell us a little bit more on the interaction with the parent brand and how that worked from a technology point of view? Because it's a relatively uncommon relationship what you have in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I won't be able to get into the specifics of the actual projects because of confidentiality. Yeah. They can try to keep it higher level and, what is the principle that is transferable. And I think the key there is where can we leverage the group scale where it helps and where do we need actually to protect the brand specificity? Because the question is, it's if the only thing that we do is integration for integration's sake, we forget why we put together these brands, why we created Ennismore in the first place. It needs to be an operating model decision, not just a technical decision. For example, again, where does scale really help? Data and data governance is security, infrastructure, procurement. Those are easy wins for scale. Distribution as well in certain areas. However, when you're talking about what makes Ennismore brands unique, you want to make sure that the brand still control, the content, the e-commerce experience, the commercial strategy, membership. I think you need to maintain enough flexibility. And actually, Ennismore has been very successful in this.
So you talk about the scale of various systems, and of course, not to drill too far into the weeds with the Accor-Ennismore relationship, but one thing that affects every single hotel is this whole idea of data harmonization. And now you're dealing with different systems across hundreds of properties trying to bring that data together. How do you approach that problem of bringing different systems together so that way you can have a uniform source of truth or system of records for guests across different properties, different brands, different countries, etc.?
Absolutely. It's definitely one of the challenges, especially because, for example, for a company like Ennismore, but very often also for other companies, is about bringing together legacy systems that existed before the current, corporate structure. And so, it's about the data, especially in hospitality, does not reflect it's not data, it's data. Data reflects the local processes, local system, regulation, habits, is SOPs. And so, what I've seen, both at Ennismore but also beyond Ennismore, is that you may have two properties using potentially a PMS from a similar vendor. However, the definition of your KPIs, what is a guest profile, preference, segment stay, they are all different. And then once you try to merge them, it's not only a technical challenge that can be solved, it's more like a business challenge. So, it's not only migrating from A to B, it's agreeing what data means. What is the quality threshold that we want to accept? Who owns data? Is it IT? Is it business? And then there is a big piece about the legal and compliance that is very important. So data migration is really a business transformation piece more than just an IT project.
Yeah, and I guess a follow up there is, you mentioned this term legacy systems, and as a prelude to your work in AI and your thoughts on it, it seems like every day there's a new system that's being called a legacy system, but you can't you can't gut a hotel's IT stack all at once. You have to schedule these things. So, again, what's your process and your philosophy around deciding that order of priorities for data migration?
Absolutely. I think if you're focusing on the systems, I think that is identifying which is what are the business requirements first and foremost, and then choosing via that like which is the right vendor, what is the right provider that you want to work with. Once you have selected the vendor, then it's where you started this project. You know working together between your internal team and the vendor team to set up the migration. And I think there is where the problems often start, because it's about making sure that the local teams that need to be involved have the right capability, the time, the prioritization to actually make the project happen. And that's why I'm saying it's a transformation project. It's very rarely data migration is purely technical. I think what I've seen, having done quite a few of this data migration, is that where the process breaks, it's not so much on the technical side, is transformation change management.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I imagine it can be a challenge as well because you guys have so many, or Ennismore, the brand, had so many different owners as well of properties.
Correct.
With the asset light model, that's also slowly changing, of course, across the world. But how did you deal with that, with changing preferences and
Oh yeah,
changing technology vendors all the time, right?
absolutely. And it was also for me a bit of a shock when I moved from Premier Inn, which owns
Right.
or leases basically pretty much every single hotel, to Ennismore or broader uh, hospitality players, whereas management companies. And the reality is most owners respond to clear economics. You know, if you can make your business case why an owner needs to make an investment, the owner usually responds in a constructive way. And the challenge is that very often the owners are reluctant to spend because they do not understand the business case is unclear, the payback is theoretical, or the benefits seem to accrue more to the brand. So for example, what I've seen very successful is that you have some owners which are more excited about a change, and if you can use those owners to run a pilot and prove the upside, then you can use that as a case study with other owners that may be a bit less open to do this kind of investment.
Yeah. Okay. Is that also the advice you would give to startups or scale ups that are looking to do business with larger hotel chains? Is that how it usually goes in your experience?
Yeah, I think what I've seen about Premier Inn and Ennismore, some of the companies I've been advising is pilots, especially in friendlier hotels, is where the upside is. You want to have an actual concrete example from within the network of an hotel that has seen benefits from a new provider, from a new technology, before you can really sell it internally. And how you set up the pilot is fundamental, because you can have running pilots that are done properly and they actually have a real impact, and you can have pilots that are badly run, poorly tracked, and actually that they don't really help. So I think if the pilot is set up correctly, that is like a huge win for anyone that wants to enter into a new customer.
Yeah. How many out of just an estimate, not specific, but out of the 10 pilots that you run, for example, a quarter, how many of them eventually make it to a proper integration, beyond the pilot?
My experience is probably about between 30 and 50% of pilots are
Okay.
successful. We
Yeah.
have, you may have a certain situation where the pilots are successful. However, for some reason you decided not to go with the supplier anyway, but I would say if the pilot is successful, I would say there is like a 70-80% chance of the customer going with it. And as I was saying, if the pilot is not successful, very often it's not because of the solution was the wrong solution, but because the pilot was set up poorly. So it was badly tracked. You didn't have the right people involved from a client side, and just like getting the momentum behind the pilot.
Yeah. Another part of this as well is this whole idea of a digital experience. So not just the back end systems and data migration amongst PMS, CRM, and loyalty, but also what the guests experience from a digital end. And largely that can be around the app, wherein through Ennismore and I guess Accor and other experiences, you've had some experience with building apps and maintaining the content there. So right now, though, there's a problem which is being called app fatigue, where there's essentially too many apps for people to download and they don't want to get the app on the phone. So what are you seeing from the mobile engagement side right now in 2026 for guests? And how do you approach the issue of just having things available in a very clear, intuitive way for guests?
Great question, Adam. I think the reality is that most guests do not need another hotel app or just like another app on their phone.
Yeah.
So there is, you called it app fatigue, and I totally agree. I think the guest today is quite skeptical of a new hotel app, and they really need to have a reason to download it. So to me, the question is, whenever like an hotel, an operator is thinking about creating a new app, is what can the app do that is genuinely better than web, email, or WhatsApp messaging, or even the front desk? I think apps work in two. When they put together two features, it needs to be an app that needs to, or a feature that is used often, and it generates real utility by being in an app above being, on a web interface. So, it can be a great reason to have it, but if you only use it once, it's just a faff. So, from my point of view, what it really adds value to the app is that is there multiple services that you can bundle and make identification and access easier. So, for example, there is now useful hotel apps put together check-in, keyless entry, and when I talk about keyless entry, it needs to be a good keyless entry experience. So NFC, do I need to, can I use it without unlocking my phone? Can I use the app to ask a request at the front desk, upgrades, local recommendation, benefits? I think that one is something that adds value. There's a lot of different services that have a good frequency or utility. And I think like the membership is where there is actually a lot of utility. If you have a membership, a membership proposition, loyalty proposition that is strong, customer are engaged, and that you can use the app to really be the home of this proposition about the discovery and repeat engagement, I think there is a lot of value. However, if the app is just like a container for the website, then I don't think a guest will want to download it or use it.
Yeah. Well, then the whole idea of the app brings us forward from, I guess, last decade or last 5 years to present day. Now we have AI, and a lot of your work is around AI. So how is data and apps, if you want to include that, being shaped by AI across loyalty, memberships, various types of rewards or personalization and overall engagement with brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think data, even more today compared to just like 5 years ago, is really like the lifeblood of an hotel commercial efforts. And talking about data, I think one of the misunderstandings that I see often when I consult with clients, also when my previous experience with some of my employers, is the misunderstanding is that you don't need a massive data lake. You do not need a perfect single customer view to actually start extracting value from the work you do on data infrastructure. Today, especially thanks to AI, but also like with traditional methods, you can really make a difference that is seen in the bottom line by using just a tidied and structured data. For example, take the CRM. Very often when you're like in bigger groups, you have CRM data, which is there's a lot of duplications, it's messy, there's different sources, it's not very well used. Just cleaning up the CRM data properly and using that to save a customer that is lapsing, sending relevant offers, helping with dealing with commercial pain points adds a lot of value, and it does not require massive investments. Then once you get started with data and with cleanup and you see the real bottom line impact, then you can become smarter and better. But I've seen a lot of companies that are like freeze in place saying we cannot do anything about personalization or customer engagement because we don't have the single customer point of view. Guess what? I've seen very few companies that have well done single customer point of view. It's an ideal arrival point, but the journey that really matters.
Yeah, that makes sense. What have you seen as one of the most inspiring use cases around that? So personalizing a guest journey, whether that's in one of the previous employers of yours or what you've seen in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is very interesting. So what I've seen personally as great personalization is actually like, especially if you look at the luxury and lifestyle, is about personalization at the service level, is about providing the front desk teams information at their fingertips to make the arrival and the stay experience exceptional for the guest. And this is again something quite basic. It's about a lot of it is about UX, is about how the information gets raised to the front desk, is about SOPs, which is what do we actually do with that information? What is the front desk required to do? And that one is something as simple as recognizing the guest and being able to tell them, oh, welcome back versus like a welcome, have you ever been here? Is about remembering the favorite cocktail or some setting. The guest always wants a certain type of pillow. They're basic. They're very the basics, but they're the basic of hospitality. And I think like to get hospitality is about getting first and foremost the basics done well, and I think that already helps you. And then you can have surprise and delight. On the digital side is about the personalization of the journey. So, for example, one of my clients, we're discussing now about can we personalize the checkout flow through the booking, reflecting what the customer is looking for. For example, if a customer is looking for a stay with 2 adults and 2 children, can we change the content of the booking engine to showcase, children by the pool or families having dinner, etc., versus somebody is like a business guest, a single person booking midweek. Don't show them the family having dinner. Show them like something a bit more like for single business traveler. And so it's not extremely complex to implement. You don't need like the whole data architecture to be in place. It's more about what can you do and what can you actually, what data can you get and what can you do with that and why does the customer care?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think from a competition point of view, I mean, Booking.com, they do 1,000 A/B tests a day, right?
Yes.
So it's to personalize a journey, whether a button is yellow or blue or red, that it has a huge impact on that journey, whether you personalize it to that extent or not. So that's interesting. And what you said about the CRM and having a kind of a golden profile of a customer is super important as well to drive those direct bookings, right? You can invest millions and millions in your website and maybe have a beautiful photography and still mess it up when somebody has to log in for the 20th time and doesn't see its previous stays recognized, and already spent tens and tens of thousands of dollars. So, yeah.
Or you can say, loyalty, because like checkout flows optimize completely, but then having the loyalty step that breaks the journey and forces you to become a member and then sends you back at the beginning of the journey. There is a lot in doing the basics right. There is a lot of upside, there is a lot of opportunities, and really a differentiator as well.
Yeah. Well, I remember that having that problem about a decade ago. I was working at the W in Amsterdam. We were doing a pre-opening, and this was still part of the SVG portfolio, the Starwood portfolio, right? And we would check in these consultants at one of the larger firms in Amsterdam, and almost every time they would come every week, right? It would say it would have a new reservation with no loyalty program, and you would have to log into SPG and match and merge the loyalty programs. And I just feel that hasn't improved. Even though we have so many tools and so many AI tools and that can do it in the back, and maybe the technology is there. But what you're saying earlier in the conversation, the human aspect and the operational transformation it's very hard for hotels to implement.
Absolutely. That's where there is, I think, the biggest AI opportunities, at least today, is actually taking over repetitive, high volume, high friction processes. As you mentioned, administrative processes. What does the front desk need to do that can be automated? Is about content production. You mentioned Booking.com, but even like smaller Booking.com is a huge, but also like a smaller hotel company is just about creating ads variation, posting them. That one is a lot of repetitive, high volume work that can be improved. It's about customer service knowledge management. How can you use AI to support the front desk, or can support the call center to deal with the customer inquiries? And there's a lot of value there. And it's, as we were saying, it's not doing things that are completely new. It's just doing the basics well. And then once you do them, you can improve and you can do more and really wow the customer.
Yeah. And, in your experience working with external parties, outside of the the brands that you worked with, was it a positive experience? Like, I'm not going to pitch, Gain here, but we did do an assessment for one of the hotel groups in the UK. And what we discovered, one of the first discoveries, was that within their brand.com website and their booking engine, you could book different hotels around the property that you were looking for within their hotel group. So, something that they didn't discover themselves, but hugely important by involving an external party, right? Have you had any of those experiences, or did you do everything in-house back then?
I've had very recently an hotel company updated their mobile journey, and they saw the conversion of a customer on Android mobiles basically going to zero. And then it took a few weeks to realize there was this issue, and then investigating the issue. And the solution was simply like the cookie banner was covering the book button, and the cookie banner on Android was not dismissible. So guest visiting it on Android was not able to cancel the booking banner, and apparently nobody tested it. And it was, to your point, is something that it's easy to spot once you know what you're looking for. But in the day-to-day of an hotel operation, there's so much going on. The teams are small and they're full of things to do, and then it's easy to miss.
Well, hold on, Carlos. So let's diagnose that problem, because nowadays in mid 2026, one might say, oh, can't we just use AI to do those sorts of tests for us? But then on the other hand, you say, well, an AI doesn't look at a screen the way we look at a screen when we're getting our quality assurance team to test responsively across Android, Apple, tablet, desktop, etc. So how would you learn from that specific issue so that way there's at least the QA in place. So that way, if a bug like that does come up, you can fix it moment of before you do a live release.
Exactly. And this is extremely relevant because it's one of the areas that I'm particularly focused on with some of my clients is about using AI and using synthetic guests to identify these issues, not after weeks of missed bookings, but identifying these issues the moment they go live. Traditionally in hotels, but also like in general in e-commerce, you use tools that allow you to look back and seeing where did the journey break. However, because of volumes, you need to have hundreds of, if not thousands, of broken journeys to really spot where the issue is. What you can do today with AI is actually creating these synthetic guests, send them across your booking journey end to end, click around, find certain information, and understand where is the issue. For example, if you need, depending on the hotel, but if you need an hotel, do you explain if the hotel has a parking, checkout times, etc., etc.? There are certain basics that are very important for a guest to see, to discover. And very often they are either difficult to discover, they're forgotten, they're wrong. And it's one of the reasons why then the guest goes to buy an OTA versus doing direct, because the information OTAs is very well structured and they force the hotel to structure in a certain way and they will not allow you to go live with your listing without the information. Whereas on your own website, it's easier to forget. You can actually get penalized by ChatGPT and Gemini and all the others LLMs if you do not provide that kind of information. So your visibility is lower if you don't answer. Your site is not able to answer those questions.
So this whole idea of synthetic guests, though, would you say that it helps to level the playing field with the OTAs?
Absolutely. I think now we are in one of those disruptive times where that comes probably once every 20 years, where 20 years ago or so, there was the rise of the internet and the OTAs, the change of the way like people book the journey. Today, there is a similar shift that is happening because of like the explosion of AI and AI agent. And I think right now, what is happening is really about the discovery and the discovery of the hotels, the discovery of experiences, location is more and more happening via AI agents. It's something that is starting from a low base, but from what I've seen, it went from at the beginning of 2025, where it was like less than 1% of traffic to hotels going directly via AI LLMs. Whereas at the end of 2025 was already like on the 3 to 5% of guests or visitors to the website were coming from the AI agent. And what I've seen, what I like some data shows, is the propensity to book of those guests is double the propensity of booking from a traffic coming from Google or coming from another search engine. Because the people that are arriving there, they've already done their search on ChatGPT or on Claude, and therefore when they arrive on the website, they have higher value compared to generic traffic.
So that changes the entire marketing funnel.
It's a moment right now where independents or smaller groups have a chance of gaining back distribution and getting back market share from the OTAs. Is an opportunity for a nimble challenger brand to move faster than the big massive listed companies, because simply like they can move faster. And also AI is probably one of the first times that happens in technology where you do not need a massive budget to start seeing the benefits. When everything moved to cloud, you needed millions to really embrace cloud and the system, and it was complicated. You need an expert, etc. Now AI is a very low barrier to entry, and you can actually gain value already like at a low level. And I think that's where, if a challenger brand that really puts their head up to it, they can really get a a lot of benefit from the change in discovery, the change in distribution, the opportunities for moving faster.
Makes sense. Talking about moving faster, Carlo, what do you think about hotel chains or even independents building out their own tools, right? Maybe vibe coding their tools with Claude or Lovable or any of those codecs whatsoever. Adam.
And also saying this in the context of the recent Claude Code data breach.
Right.
So let's take that into account, Carlo.
Yeah, absolutely. So from my point of view, hotel groups, unless they have a proper technology team, should be cautious in going down the vibe coding route. I think if it's internal tools that don't touch customer data, that can get purely used internally for processes that are repetitive and that they can gain advantage, by all means, I think it's a great opportunity. However, to your point, there is a risk for a vibe coder to really touch customer data, payment data, and very often the challenge is just like maintaining those tools. Because if you send a tool in production, it's not about like you send it in production and then you forget about it. You need to patch it, upgrade it, make sure that it still works. So to me, where the opportunity is for challenger brands is taking advantage of this ecosystem that is now exploding of AI tooling providers that can really provide a much cheaper and faster and, to be honest, new features compared to what was available before. So, the type of, we're mentioning CRM. I think CRM is a big opportunity for disruption. I think if we're talking about distribution, there is a lot of tools that can help establish hotel brands to be smarter in the way they distribute their availability, in the way they price their products. And I think there is a big opportunity. If we're talking about disintermediating your PMS provider, I think that one is probably something better left.
Yeah, it's an open heart surgery. So what we compare it with, right? I think my last question from a PMS point of view, or in general your hotel stack, are you more of a fan of a all-in-one tools that are bundling 3-4 different features or solutions in one, or is your opinion the contrary, saying, hey, we want the best of breed and a lot of different technologies and different integrations, making it a rather complex system? What is your preference?
Great question. And my answer, I'm going to be edging it. I think it depends. If you're a small operator with 1 to 5 properties, you probably want to go with the simplicity. One tool that covers all your needs is probably the easiest way to get started and to manage your portfolio. However, as you grow, as your requirements becomes more complex and you understand really what you need, I think that's where the modular approach or the composability approach is where there is really a lot of power. And so it depends really on the size of your business and the complexity of your customer needs and the skill set of your team.
Yeah, I'm personally always a fan of the all-in-one. And my follow-up there is to go back to the whole idea of data migration. And what are your thoughts on how all-in-one can help with the data migration to have those use cases, that personalization, the mastering of the basics? How do you frame that when you're discussing that with hotels?
Yeah, I think the beauty of all-in-one system is that really there you don't have to worry about the different system to talk to each other. I think that is where the real strength of the all-in-one solution is, that out of the box, or as close as you can to out of the box, you can get your PMS, CRS, CRM all talking to each other, and the customer really has a smooth experience. And I think and I think this is where, for example, tech vendors and teleoperators really need to think about is not so much the beauty of the solution for the operator, is more about what can you achieve from a consumer point of view. What does the guest sees? The guest doesn't care whether you have a all-in-one solution or if you're using 10 systems. What the guests care about is that the loyalty membership is a seamless integrating with their experience. They want to see the journey online already recognizing them as a repeat guest, and therefore already tweaking their experience to reflect what their previous stated preferences. I think that is where you can do it very easily and very powerfully with an integrated all-in-one solution. And I think to me that's where all-in-one solution really shine. And I think from a guest perspective, it's a bit like of magic. In one of the clients I was advising, one of the challenges was, they had just created this new loyalty proposition, and the guests were complaining that once they were at the hotel side, everything was beautiful and personalized. As soon as they moved to the restaurant side or the spa side, the restaurant team and the spa team had no idea who they were and why they were there, because the system was not talking to each other.
Yeah. So, Carlo, to finish off here, we've talked about AI, data migration, all-in-one systems, mastering the basics as the underlying, I guess, operation trend. What other big hotel tech trends do you see and you're excited about?
Ooh, beyond AI, I think there's probably three areas that I think they're quite exciting for me. First of all is the payment side. Payments historically in hotels and hospitality have been painful, has always been an afterthought. And I think now with the new generation of payment providers is very easy for hotels to offer first-class payment experiences. For example, think about payment methods. It's hospitality and travel for a business that it's all about people from all over the world coming over and experiencing different countries is historically quite close in terms of the payment methods that are accepted. So, for example, if I'm coming from even just like Italy, or if I'm coming from Belgium, I'm used to use payment methods that are maybe not offered by my London hotels. If I'm coming from China, I would love to use WeChat or UnionPay to do my payments. And so by offering a variety of payment methods, by offering buy now and pay later proposition, you're really making your product more appealing to a wider selection of customers. I think that one is happening today. There's a lot of value, and not only on conversion, but also on data. Because, for example, where a lot of data breaks is the hotel knows me. When I go to the restaurant or the hotel, if I don't put my bill on the folio, very often the restaurant has no idea that me as a guest of the hotel have actually had dinner at the restaurant. However, you can now integrate in a smart ways your credit card to be effectively assigned to you as a person, and therefore the hotel has a much better chance to know that even though you didn't register as a guest at the restaurant, they can figure out the credit card used to pay was actually your credit card, and therefore we can still connect. That one to me is probably the biggest opportunity because it's massive. Second, I think is making hotel retailing better. What I mean here is about e-commerce. E-commerce in hotels is still pretty stuck in what the e-commerce was 10, 15 years ago. Personalization is low. Booking flows are stale. We ask a lot of information. We make it very difficult to book a room and to go through a payment flow. Booking flow. I think there is a lot of opportunities. Upselling, cross-selling. There's a lot of opportunities that today the hotels are not really leveraging. There is more tools and opportunities for hotels to do better. And probably the last one for me is, this one is probably a bit more connected with AI, but is about the content operations. Very often content is a bit unglamorous within the hotel, but it's very important that the quality of the content, translation, which languages do you support, the structure of the content. There is a lot that can be improved. And I think now there are tools that help hotels to really get their content to shine more.
Wow. That's a lot to think about, Carlo. And, definitely almost another podcast, but, with AI, things may change in 6 months and we'll have the content situation solved.
Absolutely.
So, Carlo, can't thank you enough for coming on the show. It's been a fantastic and very powerful 45 minutes. Tantissime grazie. Tantissime grazie.
Grazie, Adam. Grazie, Vincent.
Grazie mille.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Gain Momentum podcast. To stay up to date, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Gain Advisors, head to gainadvisors.com.